The sun vanished without warning. One moment it was there, bright, golden, the way it had always been over the Pacific. The next, an impossible shadow swallowed the light whole. Skyscrapers in Tokyo, Los Angeles, Sydney, all plunged into twilight at noon. Captain Ryan Blake felt his stomach drop before the alarms even started blaring. "Report," he snapped, fingers digging into the armrests of his command chair aboard the USN Defiance. The orbital defense platform hummed around him, its crew scrambling as sensor feeds lit up like a Christmas tree gone mad. "Massive object just exited FTL," Lieutenant Chen barked, her voice tight. "Directly between Earth and the Sun. Dimensions, sir, it is bigger than the moon." Blake's screen flickered to life, displaying the monstrosity. A sickle-shaped leviathan, its hull black as a shark's eye, studded with glowing red nodes that pulsed like a slow, hungry heartbeat. Smaller shapes, hundreds of them, detached from its underbelly, descending toward the planet like a swarm of locusts. "Identification," Blake demanded. Chen swallowed hard. "No match in our databases. But energy signatures match those rumors from the Proxima colonies before they went dark." A cold weight settled in Blake's chest. The Proxima disappearances. The silent distress calls. The whispers of something harvesting worlds on the fringe of known space. Then the comms crackled to life. A voice, if it could be called that, filled the bridge. Guttural, layered, like three throats speaking in unison. It bypassed translation protocols entirely, drilling straight into their skulls. "People of Terra, you have been assessed. You have been classified." The words carried the weight of a death sentence. On the main screen, the alien fleet spread across the planet's curvature, blotting out continents with their numbers. Blake's fingers twitched toward the weapons console. Species designation, Class-D Livestock. A collective flinch ran through the bridge crew. Livestock. The word hung in the air like the stench of a slaughterhouse. "Sir," Ensign Rivera whispered, "they're hailing every major city. It is going global." Blake nodded grimly. The feed switched to Times Square, where the massive screens now displayed the same sickle ship emblem. Crowds stood frozen, staring upward as the voice continued. "Your biological matter will sustain the Vorac Dominion. Your weak flesh will feed our young. Your primitive structures will house our larvae." In Sao Paulo, a harvest ship touched down. Its maw yawned open, disgorging armored figures, tall, chitinous, their limbs ending in curved blades. Neural whips crackled in their grip as they began herding screaming civilians into pulsating organic pens. Blake's knuckles whitened. "Arm all batteries, target the lead harvesters." "Captain," Chen said quietly. "Fleet Command is ordering stand down. They're negotiating." The comms crackled again. This time, a Vorac face filled the screen, a nightmare of segmented plates and dripping mandibles. Its four eyes locked onto Blake with terrifying focus. "You orbit our property. Insect, power down your pitiful weapons." Blake didn't blink. "This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy. You are in violation of sovereign Terran space. Withdraw immediately." The Vorac made a sound like grinding bones laughter. "Your defiance amuses us, observe." The screen split. A harvest ship hovering over Cairo unleashed a beam of sickly green energy. The Great Pyramid dissolved in seconds, reduced to bubbling sludge. "This is not war. This is collection. You will kneel, or you will be culled." Silence on the bridge. Blake could hear his own heartbeat. "Sir," Rivera shouted. "Multiple launches detected from Siberia. It is the Red Star battle group." "They're not waiting for orders." Blake's lips peeled back in a feral grin. "About damn time." The Vorac commander tilted its head. "You would throw your lives away." Blake reached for the fleet-wide channel. His voice rang out across every Terran warship, every bunker, every last-ditch missile silo buried in the desert. "You think we're prey?" He thumbed the safety off the Defiance's main railgun array. "We're the goddamn hunters." The first shot tore through the void like the wrath of an angry god. A harvest ship exploded in a fireball that briefly outshone the stolen sun. The Vorac stopped laughing. The first Vorac harvest ships touched down in Times Square at dawn. Their curved black hulls reflected the neon glow of billboards that still flickered with last night's advertisements. Ryan Blake watched from orbit, his fingers digging into the armrests of the Defiance's command chair. The live feed showed shock, troops pouring from the ships, towering insectoid figures with segmented armor that gleamed like oil. Civilians screamed and ran as neural whips cracked through the air, their electric arcs sending people convulsing to their knees. Captain Comms Officer Chen said, her voice tight. Dominion Command is repeating their ultimatum. Blake didn't need to hear it again. The alien voice had been looping for hours, a guttural growl translated through the ship's systems. Surrender or be culled. Class-D species have no rights, you exist to serve. On the screen, a Vorac warrior dragged a man by his hair, its mandibles clicking as it examined him like livestock. The man swung a fist, useless against chitinous plating. The Vorac backhanded him casually, sending him skidding across the pavement. Target that harvest ship, Blake said. Weapons Officer Ruiz hesitated. Sir, the collateral. Target it. The Defiance's railgun charged with a whine that vibrated through the deck. On the main screen, crosshairs locked onto the Vorac vessel, Blake's jaw clenched. Fire. The slug hit at 5 meters per second. The harvest ship didn't explode. It vaporized in a flash of white light, along with every Vorac within 50 meters. The shockwave blew out windows for blocks, sending glass raining down on the suddenly silent streets. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then the remaining Vorac turned their faceted eyes skyward. A new voice crackled over the comms, deeper laced with amusement. Cute. The feed zoomed in on a Vorac warlord stepping from a command pod, his armor etched with kill marks. You think primitive kinetics frighten us? We've broken stronger species than you. Blake opened the fleet-wide channel. His voice carried to every ship, every bunker, every soldier clutching a rifle on the ground below. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Space Navy you think were prey. On the screen, the warlord's warriors began rounding up survivors again. Neural whips hissing. Blake's hand hovered over the tactical console. We're the goddamn hunters. He slammed the button. Across Earth, hidden silos opened. Not for nukes. Those were too predictable. The projectiles that launched were tungsten rods 20 meters long, accelerated to orbital velocities. The first one struck a Vorac cruiser over the Atlantic. The ship's energy shields flared, then collapsed as the rod punched straight through its hull. Atmosphere vented in a geyser of frozen gas before the cruiser split in half. Ruiz whooped direct. But Blake was already watching the next wave. Missiles streaked up from Siberia, from the Sahara, from underground complexes the Vorac hadn't even scanned. They weren't targeting ships. They were aiming for the troop clusters in every occupied city. In New York, the warlord looked up as the sky turned red with re-entry trails. His warriors froze, neural whips dangling from their claws. The first rod hit Central Park. The explosion wasn't fire. It was pure kinetic force, flattening trees and Vorac alike in a shockwave that shattered skyscrapers. The warlord stumbled as the ground heaved. His comms erupted with panicked clicks and screeches from a dozen landing zones. Report. What is? Another impact. Then another. Blake leaned forward. You wanted a harvest. On the feed, dust and debris swirled around the warlord as his forces scrambled. Here's your yield. The warlord roared an order, and his remaining troops abandoned the pens, sprinting for their pods. But it was too late. The rods kept falling, not random, not desperate, precise. A pod lifted off from Times Square, only to be clipped by a tungsten spear, spinning out of control into the Hudson. Chen suddenly straightened. Captain, we're being hailed. Dominion command frequency. Blake nodded. Put them through. The screen flickered to show a Vorac admiral, his carapace a darker shade of black, his eyes burning with cold fury. You will cease this insanity. Your species will be spare me, Blake said. He gestured to Ruiz, who brought up another feed. This one from Moscow, where human soldiers in powered exosuits were ripping Vorac warriors apart with their bare hands. One grabbed a neural whip and turned it on its owner, laughing as the alien convulsed. "You came here thinking we'd roll over. Big mistake." The Admiral's mandibles twitched. "You cannot win." Blake smiled. "We don't have to. We just have to make you bleed." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, full assault. Let's show them what Class-D really means." The Defiance's engines flared as it dove toward the battle, railgun charging again. Below, the warlord was still standing in the ruins of New York, his warriors dead or fleeing. He looked up as the ship's shadow passed over him, and for the first time, a Vorac felt something alien. The Vorac harvest, ships descended like a swarm of metallic locusts, their sickle-shaped hulls blotting out the sun over the Sahara. Neural whips crackled below as shock. Troops herded human captives into transport pens, their laughter echoing across the desert through translator modules. "Pathetic," hissed Commander Vraxis, watching from orbit aboard the mothership Reaper's Maw. His chitinous fingers danced across holographic displays showing Earth's defenses crumbling. "Their weapons barely scratch our armor. This will be the easiest harvest in cycles." Down on the surface, Major Carter adjusted his binoculars, sweat dripping down his face, despite the cooling systems in his combat armor. Hidden beneath the dunes around him, 50 missile silos lay dormant, their existence scrubbed from all records after the Third World War. "All stations confirm readiness," Carter whispered into his comm. A chorus of whispers came back. "Alpha ready. Bravo standing by. Charlie locked and loaded." The Vorac never noticed the heat signatures. Why would they? Their sensors showed nothing but empty desert and broken human resistance. A harvest ship hovered directly over Carter's position, its belly opening to disgorge more shock troops. Fire, the desert erupted. Not with nuclear fire, not with plasma, but with tungsten rods the size of subway cars screaming skyward at Mach Fay. The first harvest ship didn't even have time to scream. The kinetic impact punched straight through its center, the vessel detonating in a fireball that rained molten debris across kilometers. Vraxis jerked upright on the bridge. What? 3 more rods found their marks. Vorac cruisers shattered like glass, their sleek hulls never designed to withstand such primitive, brutal force. "Sir," a sensor officer's claws trembled. "Their weapons, they're using gravity-assisted projectiles." On the surface, Carter watched as another rod struck a descending troop carrier. The ship folded inward like crushed paper, Vorac warriors spilling out in a grotesque rain. "Target the mothership," Carter ordered. Aboard the Defiance, Captain Blake watched the tactical feed, his knuckles white around the armrests of his command chair. "They're scrambling fighters," his XO warned. "Too late," Blake murmured. The Sahara silos fired again. This time, the rods streaked toward the Reaper's Maw. The mothership's shields flared, then failed. A direct hit sheared off an entire engine array, sending the massive vessel listing violently. Vraxis stumbled, grabbing a console as alarms shrieked. "Impossible. Their tech is centuries behind us." On the ground, Vorac shock, troops faltered. Their neural whips flickered out as their commanders struggled to process the devastation. A human voice boomed over every Vorac comm channel. Blake's face filled their screens, his expression ice cold. "You came here thinking we were weak," he said, "that we'd break, but you don't know humanity." The feed cut to live footage of the shattered Vorac fleet. A Vorac warlord aboard the Reaper's Maw snarled, mandibles quivering. "These creatures fight like cornered beasts." Blake's voice returned, softer now, deadlier. "Wait until you see what we do when we're angry." The comms went silent. In the desert, Carter reloaded the silos. The Vorac had made their first mistake. They'd given humanity a target. The Vorac warlord's laughter still echoed through the ruined streets of Beijing when the sky caught fire. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes gripped her flight stick as the USN Atlantica shuddered out of FTL, its massive frame tearing through the atmosphere like a god's hammer. The ship's arrival sent shockwaves rippling across the city, shattering what few windows the initial bombardment had left intact. "All fighters deploy." Captain Blake's voice crackled through her helmet. "Hit them before they realize what is happening." Lisa's fingers danced across the controls. Her Wasp class interceptor dropped from the Atlantica's belly, engines screaming as she dove toward the Vorac harvest ships below. The alien vessels hung like bloated insects over the city, their plasma cannons still glowing from the latest round of orbital strikes. "Hayes, you've got 3 bogeys on your 6, warned her wingman Chen. "I see them." She didn't flinch. The Wasps weren't like the clunky fighters the Vorac expected. They were fast, brutal, built in secret shipyards beyond Mars, where no alien spy could reach. A harvest ship loomed ahead, its belly open as it scooped up another batch of screaming civilians. Lisa's targeting computer beeped. "Eat this, you ugly bastards!" Her thumb mashed the trigger. Twin railguns spat tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. The harvest ship's hull crumpled like paper, its anti-grav systems failing as it plummeted toward the ruins below. "Scratch one, slaver," Chen whooped. The remaining Vorac ships scattered, their smooth, organic curves twisting in panic. For the first time since the invasion began, they weren't the hunters. On the Atlantica's bridge, Admiral Kincaid watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Vorac had expected Earth's fleets to be in disarray, scattered, outdated, easy prey. They didn't know about the Black Sky Protocol. "All batteries fire at will," Kincaid ordered. The Atlantica's spinal, mounted cannon hummed to life, its magnetic coils charging with enough energy to level a mountain. The beam lanced out, slicing clean through a Vorac cruiser. The alien ship split in 2, its molten halves spinning silently into the void. Down in Beijing, a squad of Vorac shock. Troops froze as the sky lit up with fresh explosions. Their commander, a hulking brute with scarred chitin, snarled into his comm. "Report what is happening." No one answered. Then the ground shook as a boarding pod slammed into the street ahead, its hatches blasting open. Human Marines in powered armor stormed out, their rail rifles already spitting death. Lisa banked hard, her Wasp screaming past the Atlantica's flanks. She spotted a Vorac cruiser trying to flee, its engines flaring as it clawed for orbit. "Oh no, you don't." She punched the afterburners. The Wasp shot forward, weaving through flak bursts as she closed the distance. The cruiser's point defense guns tried to track her, but she was too fast, too damn angry. At the last second she rolled, slipping beneath the cruiser's shields and straight into its open hangar bay. Alarms blared as her fighter skidded across the deck, crushing a squad of scrambling Vorac troopers under her landing gear. She popped the canopy, sidearm already in hand. A Vorac officer lunged at her, claws extended. She put 3 rounds between its 4 eyes. "Welcome to Earth," she muttered, grabbing a plasma grenade from her belt. Outside, the Atlantica's guns spoke again. Another Vorac ship died. Somewhere in the chaos, a transmission crackled across the Dominion's fleet-wide channel. It was the warlord who had laughed at Blake's defiance hours earlier. Now his voice trembled. "Fall back, fall." The line went dead. Lisa grinned as she primed the grenade. The Vorac had come for cattle. They'd found wolves instead. The bridge of the Vorac command ship Harbinger shuddered as another impact rocked its starboard side. Warlord Krazak's chitinous fingers dug into his command throne, his compound eyes reflecting the flashing red alerts across the holographic displays. His second, in command, subjugator Vex, hissed through slitted nostrils. "Impossible," Vex spat. "The livestock are boarding us." Krazak watched the external feeds. Human boarding pods, jagged, armored shells with no elegance, no grace, clamped onto the Harbinger's hull like parasites. Cutting torches flared against the ship's outer plating. "Seal the breach points," Krazak snarled. "Flood the corridors with nerve gas." Vex's mandibles twitched. "Already done, Warlord. They won't survive." The deck beneath them buckled. A deafening crunch echoed through the ship. followed by the unmistakable sound of reinforced metal tearing. Alarms wailed. Then came the gunfire. Captain Ryan Blake's powered armor boots slammed onto the Harbinger's deck, the maglocks engaging with a metallic thunk. Around him, 12 more Marines of the United Earth Strike Force landed in formation, their rifles already sweeping the smoke. Filled corridor, the nerve gas curled harmlessly against their sealed suits. "Move," Blake ordered, his voice a growl through the helmet speakers. Bridges 3 decks up, fast and mean. A squad of Vorac shock troops rounded the corner, their carapace armor glinting under the emergency lights. Neural whips crackled in their claws. They barely had time to raise their weapons before Blake's squad opened fire. Railgun rounds punched through chitin like paper. Vorac body splattered against the walls. Contact front clear. Corporal HSU barked. Blake didn't slow. He kicked the mangled remains of a Vorac soldier aside and motioned forward. "Keep pushing. They're not ready for close quarters." Subjugator Vex staggered back as another explosion rocked the ship. The humans were carving through bulkheads like they were made of cloth. "Warlord, they've breached Deck 7. There," Krazak backhanded him. Silence. He turned to the remaining bridge crew. "Deploy the Scourge drones, flood every corridor between them and us." The drones were a last resort, self-replicating machines designed to dissolve organic matter. They slithered from hidden compartments in the walls, a tide of silver death. It bought them 5 minutes. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes' fighter streaked past the Harbinger's shattered flank, her guns shredding another Vorac point defense turret. "Blake, you seeing this?" she radioed. "Their whole fleet's in disarray, they're scrambling." Blake's response was punctuated by gunfire. "Good. Means we're on schedule." A Scourge drone lunged at him from a ventilation shaft. Blake sidestepped, grabbed it mid-air, and crushed it in his gauntleted fist. Sparks fizzled between his fingers. "Hayes, keep their fighters off us. We're almost to the bridge." The final bulkhead to the Harbinger's command center was reinforced with enough alloy to stop a tank round. Blake didn't bother with the door. "Breach charge," he ordered. The Marines slapped the shaped explosives onto the hinges. A deafening boom later, the door crumpled inward. Blake stepped through first, his rifle raised. The bridge was chaos. Vorac crew scrambled for sidearms, their usual arrogance replaced by something new, something raw and primal. Warlord Krazak stood at the center, his ceremonial blade drawn. "You dare defile this ship," he hissed. Blake didn't answer. He fired. The round took Krazak in the shoulder, spinning him backward. The warlord crashed into his throne, hissing in pain. Vex lunged, only for Corporal HSU to put 3 rounds through his skull. Blake strode forward, his armored boots clanking against the deck. He stopped in front of Krazak, looming over the wounded alien. The Vorac warlord looked up, his compound eyes wide. "What are you?" he whispered. Blake's helmet retracted, revealing his scarred face and ice-cold stare. The fucking upgrade. He raised his sidearm. The shot echoed across the bridge. Outside, the Vorac fleet broke. Ships that had never known retreat turned tail, their formations collapsing. Humanity wasn't just fighting back, they were winning. The Vorac fleet burned through the void, their sleek sickle-shaped ships scarred and broken. What had begun as a simple harvest had turned into a nightmare. Behind them, the human vessels came jagged, angular things that moved like predators. Their engines flared crimson, painting the stars with trails of fire. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, his knuckles white around the command rail. The Vorac were running. That alone should have been enough, but humanity had been pushed too far. "All ships," Blake said, his voice cutting through the static of the comms. "Pursuit pattern Delta. We don't stop until they're dust." The Atlantica surged ahead, her railguns humming as they charged. Lieutenant Lisa Hayes' voice crackled over the fleet channel. "They're trying to jump to FTL if they make it." "They won't," Blake interrupted. The human fleet split, smaller strike craft darting forward, like wolves closing on wounded prey. The Vorac command ship. The Reaper's maw shuddered as its engines sputtered. A kinetic rod from the Defiance slammed into its flank, shearing off entire decks in a silent explosion. Inside the Reaper's maw, Warlord Krazak gripped the edges of his command throne. His chitinous plates rattled with rage. How do they fight like this? They were supposed to be prey. His second in command, a scarred veteran named Vexis, hissed through clenched mandibles. They're not just fighting, my lord, they're hunting us. The comms panel lit up, a human voice, cold and clear, filled the bridge. Vorac Command Vessel Reaper's Maw. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Starship Defiance. Power down your engines, surrender, or we will erase you from the stars. Krazak snarled. You dare dictate terms to us? We are the Dominion. We have ruled 1,000 systems. Blake's response was immediate. The Defiance's main battery fired. The shot wasn't aimed to kill. It wasn't aimed to disable. It was aimed to terrify. The projectile punched through the Reaper's Maw's forward shields, skimmed along its hull, and detonated just ahead of it. A warning shot that sent debris spinning into the void. Across the galaxy, eyes turned toward the conflict. The Zephyrian High Council watched from their observation posts, their slender limbs trembling. The Sorelian Enclave, who had once scoffed at human primitiveness, now stood in stunned silence. One Zephyrian diplomat, her silver scales dull with shock, activated the interstellar broadcast network. We may have misjudged this species. The words spread like wildfire aboard the Defiance. Blake watched as the Vorac fleet broke apart. Some ships tried to flee, others turned to fight. A last desperate stand. It didn't matter. The human ships were faster, meaner, hungrier. Hayes' fighter squadron weaved through the chaos, her guns blazing. That's for New York, she muttered as a harvest. Ship exploded behind her. The Atlantica's railguns spoke again. Another Vorac cruiser cracked in half, its insides spilling into the vacuum. Blake opened a channel to the fleet. Remember what they did to us. Remember the pens, the whips, the arrogance. His voice hardened. Now show them what happens when you push humanity too far. The human ships surged forward. The Vorac had come to Earth expecting docile cattle. They left knowing the truth. Beware the Terrans, the Vorac homeworld burned. Not with the cleansing fire of orbital bombardment, but with the smoldering ruins of their own arrogance. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching through the view screen as the last Dominion defense platforms tumbled from the sky. The planet's surface was scarred, not by human weapons, but by the panicked retreat of the Vorac themselves. They had torn their own cities apart in their desperation to flee. All enemy signals have gone dark, Lieutenant Hayes reported, her voice tight with exhaustion. Their fleet is either destroyed or scattered. Blake nodded, his jaw set. Around him, the crew of the Defiance moved with quiet efficiency, their faces streaked with sweat and soot. They had fought for months, chasing the Vorac across star systems, dismantling their empire piece by piece, and now here they stood, above the heart of the Dominion itself. Open a channel, Blake ordered. All frequencies, Galactic broadcast. The comm officer hesitated. Sir, the entire galaxy will hear this. Blake's smile was thin. Good. The transmission crackled to life, carrying his voice across 1,000 worlds. People of the Dominion, he began, his tone low and deliberate. This is Captain Ryan Blake of the United Earth Starship Defiance. Your warlords thought we were weak. They thought we were prey. He paused, letting the silence stretch. You were wrong. On the surface below, Vorac survivors huddled in the ruins of their once great cities. Their leaders, those who hadn't fled, listened in stunned silence. We could burn your world to ash, Blake continued. We could do to you what you tried to do to us. But we won't. A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. Because we're not you. A holographic projection flickered to life beside him, an image of Earth, blue and green and unbroken. This is our home, you came for it, and now you know the price of that mistake. The transmission ended, silence settled over the bridge. Then slowly, the crew began to cheer. Not in triumph, but in relief. In vindication. Hayes exhaled sharply, rubbing her temples. Think they'll listen. Blake glanced at the view screen again. The Vorac homeworld hung in the void, broken but not destroyed. They'll listen, he said. Or next time, we won't stop at their doorstep. Across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. The Zephyrian High Council convened in emergency session, their diplomats pale with shock. The Cerulean Trade Alliance halted all negotiations with the Dominion, their merchant fleets rerouting to avoid human space. Even the reclusive Cricks who had watched the war from afar sent a single, terse transmission to Earth Command. Terms of non-aggression requested. In the ruins of the Vorac capital, a lone warlord staggered through the wreckage of his palace. His armor was cracked, his pride shattered. Around him, his people whispered, not of revenge, but of fear. One word, Terrans. Back on the Defiance, Blake turned away from the view screen. Set course for Earth, he ordered. Let's go home. The engines hummed to life. The ship turning toward the star. Behind them, the Vorac homeworld grew smaller, a fading ember in the dark, and across the galaxy, a new era began. One where humanity's name was spoken not with contempt, but with caution, with respect, with fear. Beware the Terrans,